Jeff, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
Manny, I'm doing great. I'm down here in South Florida. It's sunny, not in Chicago anymore. We moved a couple of years ago out of Illinois, and I think it was a good move.
How many bottles of wine did you have to move out of Chicago and take down to Florida?
Well, not as many as I did have at one point, but it was interesting. I probably maybe 500 or so. Nothing more than that. Put them in storage. You know, you had to move those all separately. Call a different company, the insurance, and then the storage down here until we got into our house. So it was a little bit of not an issue, but a little bit of
It's a big deal.
logistics. Let's just say logistics.
Does it matter, Jeff? You're a wine guy. I'm not a wine guy.
Right.
I'm a simple beer guy. Does it matter when you have one of your fancy bottles of wine that you need a special company to come and pack and move, and you open that thing up and drink with your friends? Is it really better than the $20 bottle of wine that you can buy at the grocery store?
Just depends on your taste, man. I always tell people, buy what you like, number one, and buy what you can afford. And that's just really the two themes that I've stuck with. And, when I was playing the PGA Tour, I probably purchased a little more expensive wine when I got on PGA Tour Champions. Not that it was a pay cut, but the purses were less. So my wine purchases, the price per bottle went down a little bit.
What's the most you've ever paid for a bottle of wine?
Probably $500. Nothing more than that. I've had friends open wines that were obviously much more expensive than that, and that's a real treat. But 500 back then was about my limit.
Did you have a special bottle of wine that you were saving for a special occasion? And if I may, what was it, and did you open it?
Well, interestingly enough, I didn't have a special bottle, but my daughter, an only child, was born in 1998. So I went out and bought 4 or 5 cases of really good French Bordeaux's, first gross, and stuff like that, and still have them in storage. And she's graduating from law school this May, and we're gonna open a bunch of those at her party. So that was the plan.
Very nice, very nice. I saw you on one of the preview screens here in the studio when we were playing those clips from Tiger, and I saw you smiling. Tiger first win. TGL, I get it, I understand, but it still is his first victory since the Masters back in 2019. Why was that giving you cause to smile?
Well, trust me, he wants to win at Tiddlywinks. He's that competitive. Anything he's doing, he wants to win. Great to see him with a smile on his face and talking about how important this is. And they're at the infant stages of this, and I got to see the stadium, I guess you could call it, about 3 weeks before the initial ball was struck, and it was amazing. The technology they have there, what they're doing. I think the excitement is going to continue to build over time, and obviously, anytime you have Rory and Tiger on the same golf course, let alone the same building, my goodness, what a deal, huh?
You know what, Jeff? I've watched every minute of TGL since it started, and I'm not sure about the way the ball reacts in and around the green complex itself. As a touring professional, have you watched it? Do you have any observation on that?
Yeah, the bounces are certainly different than real grass and what the guys play every week in and week out. So that would be the one thing that, if they can possibly get over that technology and figure out a different way for the ball to bounce more like a true grass green, I think that would be great. The ball kind of hits and then just kind of skids out. I think there's ways that these players will get there and they'll actually practice instead of, assuming it's going to be the same and hit 10, 15 balls before TV. They'll figure out how to make it a little better, but that would be a great point. That would be the one part that I think needs to be a little more exciting.
When Tiger burst on the scene, late 1990s, were you annoyed by Tiger and the A game and all that?
That's an interesting question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. I had a little bit more of a inside take with him because I was taught by Craig Harmon, and of course Butch was teaching Tiger, so I got to meet him actually the year before at the U.S. Open at Oakland Hills. And nice kid, and I showed him something I was doing on the chipping green to really focus my energy on where I wanted the ball to land. It was a 15, 20-foot chip shot, and you had to swish it in the hole. So I hit it, and I said, my chipping is over. And he kind of looked, and he said, well, I'm going to do that, And about 3 shots later, as I was walking, just did it, Slew. So, anything to get him uh, to do something different in golf. And then I watched him practice later on in Vegas that year, actually in '97, how he practiced. And he followed this bird that was on the range. And the bird kept moving because he kept hitting a ball, towards the bird, but not trying to hit the bird. And the ball landed every time about 3 yards left of the bird, and the bird had jumped to the right. And then a little 5 yards longer. And, just he has an idea what he wants to do and how to make it fun. So that was interesting to watch. But getting back to the A game and that was a little off-putting, I think, to most of the players until you saw him play and you realized he can win with a C-minus game. He was that good.
It's amazing stuff. Jeff Sluman is our guest. We're going to continue with Jeff. You just heard him mention, Craig, the stories of the Harmons of talking about Dad, the boys, are absolutely classic, and they take us right back into the era at the height of the likes of Ben Hogan and Sam Snead and more. That is the bridge that Jeff Sluman occupies, because when he came out on the PGA Tour, the likes of Jack Nicklaus were still teeing up. Remember, when Jeff won his major championship, Jack had won his last only 2 years prior. Hey, Jeff, what was it like in the early days for you being out on tour? Did you do the thing where you were staying with families, trying to find cheap hotels, rooming with anybody to try to control the costs?
Oh, absolutely. Back then, first of all, I couldn't believe that I was playing. I think it was Atlanta was one of my first events. It was a $400,000 purse. I was like, oh my gosh, that's $72,000 to the winner. That's unbelievable. I had never played in anything that big. So, travel was still expensive. I mean, you had to pay for your room, your airlines. They might have been as expensive as it is now. But so I would stay quite often with families and always try and double up. Mike Hulbert, Robert Wren. There was a bunch of guys that we'd, stay together just to cut costs. Absolutely.
When you were at school at Florida State, Zinger was your teammate. Who else? Who were the other luminaries back in those days? Because I imagine that had to be a classic team.
Actually, Zinger was not my roommate, it was not on the team. I got there in '77. Kenny Knox, who was a wonderful player, won the Honda tournament years ago. He had just graduated. I got there. I actually walked on for my last 2 years, and then when I graduated, then Zinger came in. And then the pipeline started from there.
I want to stay with Zing for a second because 1988, you come into that final round 3 shots adrift of Paul Azinger. He was the 36-hole leader. He was the 54-hole leader. Was anybody considering you a threat at that time? Was there anything in your makeup that kind of made you think, you know what? One of the articles I was reading in prep today, Jeff, was they called you under the radar. Not 100% certain what that means. If you're in striking distance and no one's even taking account of you, did you take account of you? What were your thoughts heading into that final round?
Interestingly enough, I made a nice up and down on the 54th hole to get into the second last group and to play with Faldo, which I loved. It was going to be all business, shake hands on the first tee. You're not going to say a word for 18 holes and then shake hands on 18, which is nice. You don't have to worry about playing with a buddy and he might be moaning or groaning or, whatever. So, and there was only 2 ahead of us. It was Zinger and Dave Rummels. Mm-hmm. It's not, to me, like I was a total unknown or hitting ground balls off the first tee. I had lost the Players' Championship the year prior to Sandy Lyle in a playoff. So obviously in a big situation, I was able to hold up at least in, 87 at the Players. So now we're 88 And I'm watching the TV that night, the local news, and they're talking about Zinger. This is his tournament to win. He's got the lead, best player in the field right now. Talked about Rummels. Skipped over me, didn't say a word about Faldo. And then well, this guy's in 10th place. If he shoots 65 today, he might get up there. And that really, honestly, ticked me off. Here I am in 3rd place, and they literally didn't mention me. So I don't know if that ever makes any difference, that you're not going to play harder. You're not going to remember that. But it just did bother me when it was all said and done.
And you used that chip. How did it manifest itself? I mean, I don't want to jump to the end of the story and everybody here, but it deserves mention now. 5 birdies and an eagle, dude. You shoot a 65. That is one of the best all-time rounds in a major championship in the final round. It's remarkable. So how did you channel that energy?
Well, I was playing well all week, and if you looked at the stats, it was one of those weeks that I led the week in fairways and greens hit in regulation. If you do that on a very difficult major setup golf course with heavy rough and tuck pins and all that, unless you've had a real disaster hole or two, you're probably going to have a decent chance to win, right? So I kept up that play, bombed it off the first tee, hit it in there about 8 feet, missed it. Next hole down the fairway, hit it in there to about a foot, and it just kind of went on from there. I haven't said this because it sounds really ridiculous, but had I honestly putted well that day, I could have shot 61, 62 very, very easily without even thinking about it.
Wow.
But I'll take the 65 and the W.
Yeah, the 65 and the W. Is it true, dude? Did you lose a congratulations letter from Jack Nicklaus?
Oh yeah, I sure did. I didn't know what was going on. They throwing me all of the PGA of America, the trophy, and then the presentation, and literally out of a checkbook, they wrote a check for $160,000. That was the winner's share back then. So I gave it to my future wife, and then I had all the media to do, and I was staying at Willie Wood's house, actually. He was a member there and played, and 2 minutes from the first tee. So did all the media and that, and then I went to my locker, and all these notes were in there, and I saw one from Jack Nicklaus. I'm like, oh my gosh, Jack Nicklaus. Never played with him yet, and all that, and opened it up, and somehow in all the chaos, unpacking everything and going to Willie's house, I lost it. So I sheepishly saw Jack the next week at Castle Pines and said, Jack, I really appreciate the note, but I lost it. Is there any chance you could write another one? He kind of looked up at me like, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. So he wrote it out, and that was great. That was the start of it's been a great friendship I've had with Jack ever since.
Do you keep memorabilia? I mean, especially since you just recently did a move, I assume that question's even more acute. Is there stuff that you keep and display?
Yeah, notes from Jack. Arnold would write a note if you've won an event. A couple of notes from Byron Nelson. Oh. I met Lord Byron a number of times, obviously, at his tournament in Dallas, and he came out one time to watch me the following week at Colonial, and my caddy. This was pretty funny. My caddy said, "Look who's watching," and I looked over. I said, "Who?" And he said, "Byron's out here." I said, "Oh, I got to hit a great shot on 18 now for him." And I wheel hooked that thing, double crossed it in the water so quick. I didn't know what to do. It's just funny how your mind thinks. And that was one of the things that I remembered. Just now, how am I going to ever impress Byron Nelson, right? I mean, the winner of 11 tournaments in a row and all that. But he was such a gentleman. It was, a kid coming from Rochester, New York, and just to meet these guys in my lifetime, I really, you can pinch me because it's been unbelievable.
Were you cognizant of the fact that you were playing in a bridge era, that you had these greats of all time, in some cases like Jack Nicklaus, and definitely in the case of, say, a Tom Watson, et cetera? They're still playing. They're still competing. They're still winning. They're still popping up on leaderboards. Even at your major, you see Raymond Floyd very much in the mix. Were you aware of the fact that you're playing with these all-time greats, and then your career bridges to and beyond the likes of Tiger Woods? It's a very unique time period in which you possessed.
It really was, and yeah, it was because my father was into golf, and when I was 10 years old, 1968, the U.S. Open was at Oak Hill, so we drove over there and we parked on the west course. They've got 36 holes there, and the east is the championship course, and got out and I said, Dad, these fairways are better than the greens we put on. So he said, this is, son, this is real golf you're going to see. So we went there to obviously watch Arnold and all that. But that was my first taste of really what a major event is. And Arnold was there. Al Geiberger was there. Obviously, Trevino burst on the scene winning that. Jack was there. I mean, it was legendary, the people that my father had introduced me to through, golf watching on television. So that was kind of the start.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. You heard me tease about the Harmon brothers before we went to break, and Dad. All right, father and the sons, who of the lot is the funniest?
It depends on your type of humor, I guess. But, I would say maybe Billy Harmon, the youngest son. And he's one real funny man. Butch and Craig. Dickie unfortunately passed away, as we all know, and he had an unbelievable sense of humor. He kind of had this cowardly lion, to him, and he just wanted to be around all those guys. It was a real treat for me, especially at the Masters when they would all get together, and I'd be in the room with them, throwing barbs back and forth, throwing stories back and forth, talking about their dad. I mean, what a treat for me.
What's the story you shared with me one time about Dad picking up a pair of socks from the golf shop? Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I think when Dickie was the pro at River Oaks, he always used to, because Claude had them at Wingfoot, he always had cashmere socks.
Cashmere socks.
Cashmere socks. I never had a pair of cashmere socks. I don't know if you have, Matt, but every day he'd walk by and Dickie'd be in the shop and Claude kind of talked like this. He'd pick up a pair and go, "Whoo, Dickie, put this on my tab," and they're like $32 a piece. And Dickie never wanted to say anything, but for some reason, Claude knew that it bothered Dickie. So, anyways, years later, when Claude finally passed, Dickie's going through his room. He never opened one pair of the socks. They were just sitting there. He was just doing it just to give Dickie a little dig. So that was kind of the Harmon humor, right? If they knew it bothered you, they'd keep doing it to you, which was, really fun to be around.
How good was it for you to be through Craig, et cetera, for you to be just a part of the mindset? I'm not just talking about the humor. I'm not just talking about the digs. I'm talking about the mentality that, yes, you can.
It was amazing. What a break for me to have Craig be the pro at Oak Hill. And when I went to him and saw him for the first time when I was 19, kind of took me under his wing. And I had no idea that I might ever even play in a tournament, let alone play in a bunch of them and be successful. But once it got to that point, if you were with one Harmon, you were with all the Harmons. They'd keep an eye on you. And Craig really and truly, outside of my family, mentored me to become what I can honestly say a real golf professional. And without him and his guidance in that, I don't think I'd be where I am right now.
Our guest is Jeff Sluman. It was some years ago, our friend Sean McKeel said to me, and I'm paraphrasing now because I can't remember the exact quote, but he basically questioned how beneficial winning a major championship was to him at that time. Because with it carries a tremendous amount of weight, of pressure, of expectation. Some of it, maybe a lot of it, in fairness, is from outside of you, but I think the vast majority is from within. So, Jeff, when you're talking to us and that little cartoon thumbs up hand comes up on the screen, what is that? Is that like you get an email or something?
I have no idea what it is.
All right, don't fix it though, so you'll disconnect it.
No.
So don't mess around with it.
I'm not touching anything. This is not my bag.
All right, so you break through in 1988. You're now a major champion. How did it change you up here? What were your expectations upon yourself? Did it help you win the next time, or was that a bridge you had to again cross?
It was a a monument for me to cross. You wanted to win again. You want to win quickly, right? And golf is not that way. Um, so I was I was very hard on myself. My friends that were out there would hear me talking to myself or at dinner, and
Thumbs up.
I just really wasn't kind to myself, and I beat myself into a little bit of a hole at times. But
Is
I
that
kept
you?
playing.
Was that Jeff?
Yeah,
Was that who you normally were? Like you were hard on yourself. You'd say this
yeah,
or that, and or was that something new?
I was really hard on myself my entire career, and then as time went on and I had not won, you can't help but read um, things and hear things, and he was a one hit wonder. He's and this isn't a bad thing, but he was the Orville Moody of the '90s, and you just kind of say it's not like I was playing bad golf. I think between um, winning and then winning in '97 in Tucson, I lost 6 playoffs. So it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't like I was playing poor golf, but I didn't get the win, and that's what you're trying to do every week when you're out on tour. You tee it up, you're trying to win, and although there was some solace in making a lot of money and a lot of top tens and being a top 30 player, I wanted to win, and 9 years in between, that's a long time to go, and there's a lot of late night chats with yourself that what's it gonna take.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about Paul Azinger, him saying to me one time, when you have confidence, you never think you're going to lose it. When you lose it, you never think you're going to get it back. How
Right.
low were the lows for Jeff Sluman?
Uh, I went through a really bad time. I kind of had the driver yips, frankly, in early '94. Played poorly in '93, but '94 was the pinnacle of bad play off the tee. And I was pretty convinced that my game was done. I wasn't going to get it back. It was that bad. But I just kept working and working and working, and then finally got out of it. And then got some stressful situations that it showed up real late in the fourth round. But it wasn't the nerves on the first tee of Thursday that I had anymore. So I did get through it, but that was honestly a tough 12 to 18 months from '93 through mid '94.
What do you think pulled you out of not only that stretch, but through into victory? He ended up winning a total of 6 times on the PGA Tour, which is incredible when you get right down to it, including that major championship. What do you feel pulled you through? Was it as Craig Harmon described you, your bulldog mentality? Was it because now all of a sudden later on you're becoming a father? What was the combination? What was the recipe for you to save yourself?
Well, I was a little easier on myself as time progressed, but I've always had that kind of that imposter syndrome, right? Boy, does everybody or anybody know around here that I don't think I'm really that good? Um, but your peers would tell you, and your friends, hey, you're an unbelievable player. Just go out and relax and go play the game. Let the game come to you and stuff like that. And so as I got older, a little more mature, becoming a father, husband, and everything, that kind of got me on a much more even keel. Um, I remember people watching me and say, "Boy, you look really calm and cool and collected out there." Well, I was actually a bag of nerves, but you kind of gotta hide those. And I remember a conversation with Tiger when he came over to the house for dinner during one of the Western Opens, and I said, "Boy, it really looks like you're calm and cool and everything." He says, "No, I'm nervous." I said, "You are?" He said, "Yeah, but I know everybody else is more nervous than me, so that kind of calms me down." So, you know, you kind of figure out mentally where it helps you. And but I got through a tough period and then became even a better player as I reached my late 30s and early 40s.
Did you ever get any similar pearls of wisdom, either in words or an observation of the likes of Jack Nicklaus or Arnold Palmer?
No, not really, because I was not that type of, I shouldn't say player. I wasn't that type of person that I would go up to either of them, although they would have, embraced if I did. But I wasn't that type of person that was going to go up and unload my my issues of trying to finish a golf tournament on them. I just said, I got to figure this out on my own, and finally did.
Speaking about a period just prior to that, which you described, in which you had it pretty well figured out, all due respect to your 1988 win at the PGA Championship, because what you did was mind-blowing. We just talked about that. One of the greatest final rounds of all time, and frankly doesn't get the credit that it deserves. In 1992, at the U.S. Open, you finished second to Tom Kite at Pebble Beach, only 2 shots behind him. I bet if I did it, I'm guessing that a lot of people know that Tom Kite won the 1992 U.S. Open, but if I ask him a question who finished second, not too many people usually get those questions right, not just about that U.S. Open or about any, but in fairness, your 2 shots behind finish of Kite was remarkable. What do you remember about that final round when it was so brutal?
Well, the final round, I played a good Saturday round and kind of got me up the leaderboard as conditions worsened on Saturday. And then we knew Sunday was going to be a brutal day. The greens were rock hard as it was on Saturday. And then, low humidity, very windy, 20 to 35 mile an hour winds. It was only 60 degrees. So we knew it was going to be a brutal day. And I just went out and played golf the way I was taught to be played, and I like those conditions. I like to keep the ball down in the wind and keep it close to the ground. But it was some kind of day. Example, you watch Pebble Beach this week. The guys are going to be hitting a 60-degree wedge, most probably on the 7th hole. But there you go. I hit 6-iron that day.
Whoa.
I mean, I tell people 6-iron, and they start laughing. I said, no. I mean, I hit a 6-iron. Now, it wasn't a full blasted up in the air, but that was the club to keep it down with the wind, how it was howling. And I hit it pin high to the right, didn't hit it in the right bunker, but chipped it up there to about a foot and made it. But the greens were rock hard. You weren't leaving a ball mark. The golf course was incredibly difficult. Guys were shooting mid-80s, and I was the one guy that shot under par. I think I birdied 2 and 18. I hit it in on 18 to about a foot, and then I bogeyed number 9, I think. And that was it. But, really a wonderful round. And Azinger I read a quote for him later, I think the next tournament was in Westchester. He said, if anybody breaks par in the afternoon, I'm going to quit the game of golf. So I see him and I said, so when are you announcing your retirement? And he went, Slowly, how the hell did you do that? But I mean, it was that bad. The guys were shooting mid 80s and probably there might have been 90s earlier in the day. I don't know.
How long, or did you have a moment where you were like, I've done enough, I've won this U.S. Open?
I never thought that. You got Tom Kite back. He played Pebble a ton. I know that Jack apparently anointed Monty as the winner because Monty
he congratulated
was third because Jack saw the weather conditions that were coming in. Monty got in much earlier, and bottom line is I hit it in there a foot, and I looked up the leaderboard and I said, this may be it, but you got Tom Kite and in back of me, and but I shook that 1-footer in somehow on 18. I'm telling you, I backed away from it. I watched the replay because the wind was howling so much. You could easily miss a 1-foot to 18-inch putt that week. But Tom played great, and I tell people, I played well enough to win. But for Tom Kite to get up on 18, left to right, hard wind, and take driver out and win the U.S. Open, my hat's off to him.
So, Slu, what do you think? 12-year-old you, did you have a dream of doing what you did? Would the 12-year-old you be proud of who and what you became?
100%. Yeah. I think you all dream. 10 years old, 12 years old, you're on the putting green. we all did it. This putt's to win the U.S. Open. This is to win the Masters. This is to win the PGA. I did it, and I can say I did it the right way. I grounded out, mini toured, played the Asian tour. I kept getting better and better, and nothing in golf is ever given to you, right? So I earned it, and having the Harmons under my wing, like I said, I think I did it the right way.
To have 1,078 starts, the vast majority on the PGA Tour than the balance on the PGA Tour champions, is that luck? Is it to be able to play that? Is that your golf swing that you didn't put stress on the spine? To what do you account that?
I think there's some good fortune not to be injured. I've never had knock on wood, a surgery. You're sore and you're tired, and your ligaments and your knees, your wrists, your elbows, and stuff like that. But I managed somehow to stay healthy through that. I had a desire. I wanted to play. It was funny, a couple of years ago at the very beginning, I played over at Medalist, and Craig was watching Ricky Fowler for Butch, because Butch was back in Vegas. So we all teed it up, and I said, "Hey, Ricky, let's do a numbers game." I said, "You turned pro at 20, right?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "You ever thought of," I said, because I've got over 1,000 at that time career starts. I said, "If you played 25 events every year for the next 40 years, you'd get to 1,060. And he kind of looked at me like, "You're crazy. Nobody would ever do that anymore." But my generation, we did it. We love playing. We love supporting the tour, traveling around the country. It was a dream. And I pinch myself even to this day and say how many years that I was able to do it and do it well.
Is that, and I mean this with all due respect, my friend, is that a kind of get off my grass type moment where you look at it and go, you were pounding golf balls into the dirt, probably a lot harder golf ball into a smaller target relative to the equipment, et cetera. And then you hear players today wouldn't do that. It's like you talk to the old pitchers in Major League, and they were able to pitch on less rest, et cetera. The athlete hasn't really changed. You either go out there and pound it away or not. Is there some element of that where you look at it and go, and again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to understand that today's players, by comparison, are a little soft.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I would say
I didn't think you would.
I think they play differently, and there's different torque and on their bodies than us. I mean, I started with a wooden club, steel shaft, and a lot of ball. And it was more on, I shouldn't say finesse, but it was more on getting the ball in play, working the ball around the golf course. The game has changed, and every sport has changed, right? And golf has changed along with it. And guys hit it longer, they swing differently to be able to do that. At times there's a little more travel involved. So, they're doing it the right way. They want to have the longest, most productive careers. So if they feel that less tournaments, that's fine. It's my hat's off to them. They're doing a great job. They're the best players in the world, and I go out a few times a year and watch them play, and it boggles my mind how good they are and how far they hit it, and they're doing something right. I wish I could hit it one day like they all hit it now, but that's not going to happen for me, I can tell you.
If you could fix one thing in the game, what would Jeff Sluman fix?
Slow play. Not even a contest. JT said something the other day, and it is interesting. People want to see more difficult golf courses, longer setups, more difficult, but yet they also want to see them play faster. I think there is a way. Mike Reed, a long time ago, in the early 90s, came up with a shot clock. And everybody kind of laughed at Mike. And he said, no, I'm serious. And that was kind of it. But now I think it's coming around with TGL. They've got a shot clock. Tiger got buzzed yesterday, as we all saw. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a bad idea. The officials and I understand they don't want to be deciding a tournament at the end by giving somebody a penalty for slow play. When does the clock start? It's a bit tough, but if you did have some sort of shot clock out there that was available for you or your caddy to see, that the players would adapt very, very quickly, and the caddies would know where the shot clock is, and maybe you get to call 2 timeouts if the shot is, the wind's gusting or whatever. But there's got to be a way to speed up play. It's helpful for everybody involved in the game, from spectators, broadcasters, players. I think we've got to do something. I just don't know how. But
right,
I think that's at least a good starting point.
Indeed. Couple minutes left here, and I want to thank you, first of all, because you stayed with us a lot longer than we expected, because this was awesome. We didn't want to curtail it.
And Bill Murray's watching, by
in the couple minutes.
He just texted me he's watching.
Nice. In the couple minutes that we have left, if you could go back through time in a time machine and play today instead of in the era in which you played, would you trade it?
Probably not. If anything, I would have loved to have gone into the era of the Snead, Hogan, Palmer when he first came out, Nicklaus. That would have been a great time to play. I think the guys were closer. They barnstormed together. They all traveled by car together. That was my first kind of thought with the tour from my father, and that's how they all did it back then. I think that would have been a pretty cool time to play.
Was it, just as a side here, you mentioned your father multiple times. When you finally made it on the PGA Tour, not just made it first, we only got about a minute left here, then you become a winner, a major champion at that, and you win multiple times. How much pride did that give your dad? What was that like for you emotionally?
Well, if you knew my dad, he had a lot of pride in that, and so did my mother. And they loved to come to tournaments. We loved having them there. I wish they were around, which they're not now, to watch me play, but they sure enjoyed my success, as my 2 brothers did, and I had a great family and wouldn't be here without them.
You were one of the classics of the game, my friend. Thumbs up to you. It's been fun talking to you today. We very much appreciate all the time that you have given us. Looking forward to working with you down the road, too, when we do PGA Tour Live as well. Jeff, all the best to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Appreciate it.